So, thank you very much for taking time out of your very busy week for studying towards your exams. I know some of you like to have a bit of distraction while you're studying, so hopefully this gives you something to look forward to after exams. So I'd like to first of all introduce the UQ Abroad team. So these are probably the people you've been emailing with over the last several months, and these are the people who will help you while you're overseas as well if you have any difficulty while you're on exchange. So first of all, Caroline Thompson, she's the team leader for UQ Abroad, and she also looks after all the students going to Europe and Latin America. Students going to Europe and Latin America? Great. Wei Huang is not here today, but she looks after students going to Asia. Going to Asia? Yay. Melinda Knox at the back there. Melinda looks after students going to UK, Ireland, Scandinavia. Okay, great. And Claire Scoble, also at the back, looks after students going to the USA, Canada, South Africa, and New Zealand. Fabulous. Thank you very much. Okay, so we do have a lot to cover in the next 2 hours. So I'll give you a bit of an overview for a start. We then have someone to talk about UQ insurance, travel and health while you're overseas. We have some returned students to talk about preparing to go, someone from Student Services to talk about culture shock, and also talking about staying connected with UQ Abroad, Instagram, and so on. And finally, how you can use your experience as part of your employability once you've returned. So, without further ado, I just wanted to give you an overview of the statistics for Semester 1, 2018. So, there's almost 300 of you going on exchange next semester. So, 41% going to Europe and Scandinavia, 25% to the USA and Canada, 17% to the UK and Ireland, and 17% going to Asia. 5 students to Latin America, and 2 students, 1 each, to New Zealand and South Africa. So good on you guys. So before you go, there is an online pre-departure guide and checklist. So the pre-departure guide is in the process of being updated and should be online in the next couple of weeks, as will a recording from this session. So if you want to go back and review anything that you've heard today, or if you have a friend that couldn't make it today, you will be able to listen to all of the sessions given to you this morning. So how many of you have got acceptance letters so far from your host university? Great. That's fantastic. If you haven't got your acceptance letters yet, don't panic. You will be starting your programs from the beginning of January all the way to the beginning of April. So depending on when your host university starts, that really determines when you will be getting an acceptance letter. So most people who are beginning the exchange at the beginning of January should have received an acceptance letter. If you haven't, then get in touch with us if you're getting concerned about that. Some of you I know haven't even submitted an application yet because you are beginning your program either late March or maybe even early April. So don't panic. Just contact UQ Abroad if you have any concerns. With regard to funding, so we are in the process of finalising all of the student scholarships, the new Colombo Plan funding, and the OS Help loans. It is possible to get a scholarship and an OS Help loan, and all of this information will be given to you hopefully either by the end of this week or certainly by the end of next week with regard to who will be receiving a scholarship. If you have any questions about that, again, get in contact with Employability because they handle all of the funding. So the student exchange scholarships and travel grants are actually paid after census date next year, which is the 31st of March, so you do need to be aware of that. The government funding, like the New Colombo Plan, if you're going to Asia and you're being considered for one of those scholarships, you will be able to access that funding a little bit earlier than that. OS Help loans are paid to you as soon as you have provided all of the required information. So that includes your acceptance letter from the host university and the insurance spreadsheet that you will have to complete before you can receive any kind of funding as well. If you need to get a Centrelink letter from us, if you're currently receiving Centrelink and you're hoping to continue to receive Centrelink while you're overseas, please make sure that you contact UQ Abroad before you leave. So this information is in the one of the communications that we send to you. So it is really important to get that Centrelink letter before you leave so your payments are not interrupted. You will be automatically enrolled in 4 exchange codes. So the code is EXCH, and then there's a number after that. So that will happen automatically for you in late November. So if you have any library fines, if you are aware that you have library fines over $20 worth, can you please make sure that you pay those library fines as soon as possible, because that will cause a delay in us being able to enroll you in those exchange codes. So that would be really helpful. It is really important that you check your enrollment for semester 1 2018 before census date at the end of March next year, but to make sure that you are enrolled correctly. And if you've received approval to take a reduced load, and I'll go into more detail on that later on in the presentation, then it is up to you to unenroll yourself from one exchange code. But that does mean that you won't be entitled to receive any more than 6 units worth of credit on your return to, on the completion of your exchange. Okay, so I would now like to introduce Louise Hope, who's going to be talking about the insurance policy. And just give me a minute to get that presentation up. Okay, thanks, Louise.
Just the down arrow?
Yes.
Thanks, Jan. Thanks, everyone, for coming along this morning and listening. I just want to start by saying I'm incredibly jealous. When I was an undergraduate at the University of Queensland, and we won't talk about age or numbers here, but I'm holding glasses in my hand, so that'll give you a hint. All we did is sit on our couch and eat cheese, pretty much. So while I'm happy for you, don't expect me to be excited. So there's good news and bad news in my presentation. I'm the curmudgeon for the day, by the way. Everyone else is going to be super happy and sending you on away with good messages, but I'm the one who has some good and bad messages to deliver to you. The good news is, as a student on a UQ exchange and therefore on endorsed travel endorsed by the university, you're covered by the university's corporate travel insurance policy, and that doesn't cost you any money. The bad news is there are rules, exceptions and limits associated with that. Welcome to all the law students. So when are you covered? You're covered while you're on exchange and studying. So from the very beginning of your semester, and if that includes language classes or orientation time, includes all of that until that finishes, and it includes 5 days beforehand and 5 days afterhand. Those 5 days are there for you to settle in, they're there for you to decamp at the place of your exchange in the country of your exchange. If you're going to Germany, they're not there for you to go to Greece for 5 days. It's only when you're in Germany. And that's kind of the basic rule of our insurance coverage, is that while you are in the country in which you are undertaking your exchange experience, you are covered by the university's travel insurance policy. If you're undertaking course-related and exchange institution-approved field work or other course-related travel while you were there, you're covered by the university's travel insurance policy. So again, the Germany example, if a field trip is taking you into France, then yes, when you're in France, you'll be covered. But if you just decide on your own bat to go to France for the weekend, you won't be covered. So you do need to think about that. Now, Europe's kind of an extreme example because the borders are so close and you feel like, can't I just pop across? And absolutely you can, but you need private insurance to do that. Again, we've got to have rules somewhere. Otherwise it's just chaos and the philosophy students win. So just to reiterate, when you need your own insurance, so any private travel before you end up at your host institution and outside that 5 days, before and after. If you're leaving at mid-semester break, you know, maybe you're in Ireland and you decide to go to the US for the mid-semester break, because that's a great trip. It's really easy to do, but you need private travel insurance for that. And if you happen to be in a country, and I suspect none of you will be, but if you happen to be in a country where, but things do change as the year progresses, hopefully not, touch wood somewhere. If you happen to be in a country which is just an ordinary level 2 DFAT security rating, which is just take reasonable precautions, and there's a part of the country you're going to that is actually a level 3, which is reconsider your need to travel, or level 4, do not travel, then you can't go to those destinations, even though they're in the same country as your exchange institution. You can't go there and expect to be covered by the university's travel insurance policy. Got it? That probably won't apply to anyone. So where can you get extra travel insurance? Well, some people might have the benefit of an annual policy that maybe your family takes out, and you'll just be covered under that. If you're not, you can buy insurance from the same insurer which the university buys from, that's Chubb. There's a link, all of this information and the links and the detail are on the insurance services website, which is easily found via the UQ internet. But you can go to this particular link. It recognises you as a university referral, and it allows you to buy cover even while you're already overseas. And that is something to remember, because people sometimes go and think, well, I'm never going to leave New Zealand, because why would you? You know, New Zealand has it all. But then you decide that actually you want to go to Fiji for mid-semester break. So the benefit of this way of purchasing your private cover is that you can buy it while you're already overseas, and it does have a slightly discounted rate over some other commercial providers. That said, you are absolutely free to buy insurance from whomever you choose. There's no benefit to the university for you doing this, and there's no detriment. So it's completely your choice, it's just an option. If you do buy it, it's completely between you and Chubb. It's not to do with the university. It's absolutely fine to have 2 insurance policies. Some people freak out about that. It's no problem. Essentially what happens is the insurers sort it out between themselves if something happens. What I would encourage you to do, and we'll get to the detail about what to do in an emergency shortly, but I would encourage you, if you are, you know, just at your exchange and you're pretty confident it's the Chubb policy, the UQ policy that would respond, I'd encourage you to call Chubb Assistance first. We have had some experience in the past where students requiring assistance have reached out in the first instance to their private insurer, and that's fine too if you choose to do that. But because the Chubb policy is actually quite broad, we've negotiated very broad cover and benefits under the UQ corporate travel insurance policy. Sometimes the private insurer will pay less benefits than the Chubb insurance, and then it becomes you're a bit more out of pocket, or you've lost some advantage that you might have otherwise had. And a really simple example is if you require your parents or a family member to come and support you for some reason, maybe you've become ill or you're in an accident, heaven forbid, then under the Chubb insurance policy, it will pay for 2 support people to come to you. So, you know, your mum and your dad, you know, your dad and your great aunt Doris, you know, whoever that is, so long as the insurer, you know, agrees that that's a beneficial thing to help in supporting you in the circumstance you're in. Our policy will pay for 2 people. Most commercial providers will only pay for 1. And I get that that seems like a remote possibility, but it happens. We've had people in that circumstance. They have had both parents come. The private insurer's only paid for one. They've been out of pocket until all of that gets sorted out. Can be messy, mostly in the background, and you won't have to worry about it. We would encourage you before you go to register with this organisation called Red24. Red24 are the security assistance providers with whom Chubb have a service contract. So under the insurance policy, you can have, emergency assistance of various kinds, medical, documentary assistance, and we'll get to some detail about that shortly, but also security assistance. Red24 are the security assistance providers. On their website, which you access via the link, which again is all available on our website, has some really good background information about everywhere in the world you can possibly think of. The benefit of the information available through Red24 over, say, DFAT is that the DFAT information is extremely thorough, to be sure, but it is tempered by diplomatic considerations. Red24 information is absolutely from on the ground and not tempered by those diplomatic considerations which DFAT understandably have to take into consideration. So we really encourage you to go there, read the information about your destination, even if it feels like a really familiar place to go. If it's somewhere that you're familiar with, maybe even you've a personal connection with, we'd really encourage you to do some of this pre-reading just to remind yourself about some of those differences, cultural, political, in the country that you're going to. If you require emergency assistance, if you feel a little bit unwell and want to find a doctor, if you've lost your passport, if you just not quite sure how to handle a situation, and if Great Aunt Doris isn't picking up, the first number to call is Chubb Assistance. This number is a number you should be putting into your phone. You should have it written down with your travel documents. It is absolutely your lifeline to help in many, many situations. Include in the details you keep the policy number. I think when we were coming in, we were handing out the little Chubb Assistance cards. Keep that with you. Honestly, these are the people who can save your bacon. It is a 24-hour number. It's a reverse charges number. If you are in a country that doesn't allow reverse charges, and there are countries in the world who don't, direct dial it, they'll call you back. There is an email, a 24-hour email as well, but the number is the better way to go because then you're talking to someone. And I imagine a lot of you have already travelled in your life, but if you haven't, there's a huge comfort to actually talking to someone at the end of the phone and knowing that they're trying to help you and sort out whatever your difficulty is. It's incredibly useful, they're very responsive, and they're really, really experienced. If you have a pre-existing medical condition, I don't need to know about it, but for your own benefit, it is prudent to have a Fit to Travel report completed within the 30 days prior to you travelling. That means that a doctor has considered your condition and said, yes, you are safe to travel, you're fit to travel. That way, if there's an exacerbation of your condition while you are travelling, there's no argument about the policy responding to assist you. But it's really important to remember that if you require ongoing treatment for that condition, that's not what your travel insurance policy is for. If you require ongoing medication for that condition, that's not what your travel insurance policy is for. It's not for routine medical, optical or dental treatment. That's just life. What the travel insurance policy is when things go wrong. As I say, all of this information is available on our website. You'll see there the emergency travel contact details. And we would encourage you, again, to put that into your phone, have it written down somewhere with your important paperwork so it's readily accessible. This is just a display of how to navigate through our website. And then you go through to the detail of the travel insurance. Often you will require a certificate of currency for the purposes of applying for a visa. Sometimes the host institution requires it. It's easily obtainable. We customise the certificates of currency so it has your name, the dates of your travel. You email a request through to Insurance@UQ and give us that series of information. Again, that's on our website, and we return that customised certificate of currency through to you. Some institutions have a requirement that you purchase local insurance of various kinds. You can obtain a waiver of those requirements. The institution themselves have the waiver form. Fill that in as best you can. You send it through to us. We review it. We complete the details as best we can. Our broker signs it on behalf of the insurer and we send it back. Whether it is accepted or not by your host institution is not up to us. We will absolutely do our best to supply the required information, but if they don't accept it, it's not our decision, it's their decision. Unfortunately, it's also a little bit unpredictable. Even different campuses of the same institution can apply different rules. Go figure. If you need to make a claim, so this is apart from the circumstance where you're looking for emergency assistance. If you need emergency assistance, it's all about the contact on the phone and those people working through that process. The paperwork associated with that and the costs being paid get fed back eventually to us. But I'm talking now if you have an item that's stolen or you do have sort of routine out-of-pocket expenses, routine meaning it's not an emergency but it is something which you think that policy will respond to. What happens is you need to fill in a claim form, you attach supporting documentation, that might be a doctor's report, a receipt, a police report. That is emailed through to us. We review it and just make sure it's got all the necessary information, because there's no point in sending it to the insurer for them just to send it back and say, no, you haven't given us everything we require. They have a claims manager, they're called Fullerton, and they come back to you directly. And generally within 10 working days, they'll tell you yay or nay, or we need a bit more information. If they're going to say nay, they'll usually give us a heads up first, and that's our opportunity to step in on your behalf and advocate for the claim to be paid, if indeed it's something to which the policy responds. It's really important that if you can, and obviously it's not always possible, but before you're admitted to hospital or where you are looking to incur medical costs of more than 2,500 Australian, you contact Chubb Assistance first. It's absolutely recognised that you're not always going to be in a position to do that, but if you can, please do that. If you think that you're going to have to incur additional costs of more than $5,000, again, contact Chubb Assistance. That's if your flights are cancelled and you have to rebook different flights for some reason. Also, if you lose property or if it's stolen, please do report that loss to the local police or your campus security, because that is a very important part of that kind of proof of loss. And if you do fall sick and that somehow interrupts your travel, again, make sure you reach out to Chubb Assistance just to make sure that they're comfortable that it is in fact appropriate for you to continue to travel, because what you don't want to do is half recover, continue travelling and exacerbate whatever's going wrong. So what do you get covered for? A whole lot of things. Stolen backpacks, medical evacuation if you're really, really sick. There are some excesses that you'll see up here associated with these losses. So just to remind you that insurance is not a big pot of money to spend as you choose. It's there to support you financially and practically when things go wrong. But there's a really broad range of cover available under the policy. But there's also some things that aren't covered. Criminal activity, not covered. Falling down while you've had too much at the toga party, not covered. although we argue hard on those ones. If you're back in Australia and actually it's a medical expense which Medicare will meet, the insurance policy won't cover those expenses, and nor can it cover gaps. That's a legislative restriction, but it's really important to remember that. As I've said, routine medical, optical or dental treatment, where you don't report the damage, if you leave your electronic equipment unattended, if you don't carry it with you as cabin baggage, and if you just change your plans or become disinclined to travel, generally the insurance policy is not going to cover that. So some brief examples of where things are covered by the insurance policy and what can go right to help you minimise the impact of those things going wrong. So this was a student, these are all things that actually have happened, not all of them at this institution. So they're in the old Germany experience. They're going to France for a field trip, passport's stolen, they can't go. It takes too long to replace the passport. The student didn't have a copy of the passport with them. Now that seems like a really boring step to take, and I know it's repeated many, many times. You really, really, really should do that. It makes a huge difference when you have to replace a passport. It's going to take a week to replace it. They have to cancel their trip to France. They're out of pocket for a whole lot of money. Now, it's not always possible to book refundable tickets, or they're just too expensive, and they didn't have a copy of their passport with them. But what they did do is they notified the police immediately of the stolen passport. They contacted the Australian Embassy very promptly. They notified Chubb Assistance, and they notified their home university. So that's all, lots of rule following. We love rule followers. Sorry, I should just finish that one by saying they did get the costs of their trip cancellation refunded via the insurance policy. So at least financially, they weren't as badly impacted as they otherwise might have been. This was an unfortunate person. She went to, who remarkably held her head. She went to the gym, she used the toilets, she got locked in. It was not very nice. She couldn't, there's no one around, she couldn't raise any assistance. Understandably, she became quite anxious. Yes, this is not the real person, by the way, although it was a cold place. The student eventually managed to physically escape by kind of crawling through the hole at the top. I can't actually physically think this one through, but anyway, she did. She was hurt. She found help. She contacted Chubb Assistance. She got referred to a doctor and a counsellor via Chubb Assistance. That was all paid for via the insurance policy. You know, the door went wrong. Sometimes things just go wrong. It's no one's fault. But she kind of held herself together as best she could. She found a solution and she got help, which was a really important thing. It's not a bad thing to get help. Our last one is a little bit unfortunate. These are two students who were travelling in America. They met up with someone who appeared to be connected to a drug transaction of some kind. They foolishly didn't listen to their gut and walk away. They obviously thought it was a bit of an adventure. These two young men ended up being shot. Luckily, they weren't killed, but they were very, very badly injured. One of them, I have a little bit of background knowledge to this one through a series of weird coincidences, but anyway, one of them is still recovering from this. This is a number of years on. So this was a really, really bad judgment call. These guys were not rule followers. I'm sure you're all rule followers. You look like you might be. So they really got themselves into quite a pickle. Their bigger problem with the medical cover is that because they were allegedly involved in illegal activities, there was a lot of pushback from the insurer about covering the medical costs. Now, in this particular circumstance, they ended up sort of circumventing and finding a way around but not without a great deal of effort and concern and worry, not only for the students, their parents, their family, all their friends, but also the staff of the university. So it's really important. Are they all adults? Is everyone over 18 going? So you're all adults. So that means you get to make adult decisions and be responsible for your own actions. And that's a really important thing to remember when you're undertaking this incredibly privileged experience. Anyway, that's really me. Again, everything's on our website. If you have any questions, please feel free to call us. We're really happy to talk you through it. Should I ask for questions? Or no, you can't ask questions.
Okay, thanks, Louise. Lots of really important information there. Just before we move on to the next speaker, we're going, because it's Halloween today. It's Halloween. So we've got a little bit of chocolate for you, but you have to answer a question first of all. So, first question. Where are you covered by UQ's corporate in travel insurance? Yes, in the country of your exchange. What is Red 24? Red 24. Someone's up the back there? Right, it's a security company that will provide information to you about the security situation of the country that you might be going to. What is not covered by the insurance? Illegal activities, great. And name one thing that is covered. Somewhere. Melinda, do you want to? Stolen passport. Okay, great. Thank you very much. There will be more chocolate Freddo frogs after the next presentation. And so the next one. Oops.
Okay, so just press down. I'll do it.
Okay.
So I just press that one down. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, guys. My name's Rosie Dobrovic. I'm a GP at the Health Service. I will talk to you probably wearing two hats today. One as a mother who sent 2 kids off last year. And God forbid they had a really good time. And if you go into the University of Edinburgh, you actually get 2 weeks of SWAT-VAC, 4 weeks of exams, and they travelled most of Europe before they sat their exams. I got no sleep. They were fine. Yeah, so don't tell your parents you're going to stay at some backpacker's place, taking one laptop with you, leaving the other one there just in case one gets lost. But anyway, yeah, so I'll try not to do the mother thing because I'm sure you guys will get that at home. And the other thing is, look, they came back as 2 really good independent people, started cooking, cleaning, looking after themselves and planning more travel. So, and they really got a lot out of their institutions in terms of education because it was quite different to what they received here. I can't stress to you enough how much insurance is vital in this 6 months or semester that you're away. So you've listened to all of that about the corporate cover. Make sure you talk to your doctors if you have any pre-existing conditions. Have a close look at the policy that you do have. If you do have a significant condition, really sit down and talk to your GP. Make sure you've got everything sorted out in terms of medications. If you do have a mental health condition, even if it's mild and you get stressed a bit, I really advise that when you get to your institution, find out where the health service is, and you can do that before you get there. Because we see a lot of students that come to us on exchanges. And look, it's good to know where your health service is, where the counselling service is. So if you need to get some support, get it in there, you know, at the start of the semester rather than waiting at the end. Because sometimes different forms of teaching, different forms of assessment People have less supports when they're away. It can become a little bit stressful. So if you plan before you get there, it's probably the most important thing. Now, I do have glasses on, and I was here about 30 years ago when we used to call this place the Pizza Hut. Do they still call it the Pizza Hut? Abel Smith? Okay. So I'm showing my age. This used to be called the Pizza Hut about 30 years ago, so I haven't been back here since then. And I haven't had to do one of these before, so just bear with me. The presentation was actually prepared by my predecessor, Dr. Arklay. He was the clinical director at UQ Health, and I've just taken over his position. So I'll go through them, and there'll be a little bit of ad lib, but don't be too alarmed with the first one. I looked at this and I felt, oh, there should really be a boy inebriated lying on the side there, so it wasn't really a sexist photo. But the mother of me will come out and say, please be careful. If you're a male or a female, you're in a different place. You don't have your supports there. You don't have your friends. You don't know where your supports are. So all of this talk, you've heard about the insurance and the cover. This talk is really about risk management and what you can do to really keep yourself safe. And also be aware in which country you're going to, the cultural differences and the respect that you need to have for other people there. Money. It's interesting this is on an American note because we're very privileged in Australia. Medicare will look after us, okay? If you have a problem, you know that you can go to an emergency department and you will be looked after. You know if you go to a general practitioner, if you've got your Medicare card, you might be out of pocket a bit, but you'll be looked after. If you don't have insurance when you're overseas, you can be out of pocket for thousands and thousands of dollars. So again, and this is probably, if you're going to Europe, while you're there, it's not so much of an issue. But in the case of my children, that they did their travel in Europe. But if you're in Spain and you want to go to Africa, you need to plan that now. Make sure that you do have travel insurance that covers you for that, and make sure that you see your GP. We'll talk about it later, about having your vaccinations and being ready for those sorts of trips. But definitely make sure that you're covered. Anyway, it says it all. Look, I could talk about all different types of illnesses, but at the end of the day, most of you will probably just get a common cold. Again, if you're by yourself, you don't have your normal supports, mum's got Panadol in the cupboard, you don't have any, it's a little bit more difficult. I think you just do tend to feel, really unwell when you're not in your own environment. It's a good idea when you get also to university, depending on the flu season and where you're going, just touch base and see if you can get your flu vaccine, and most of them are covered by the unis. They'll be reduced cost, or you can get them done at a pharmacy. There's no guarantee that the flu vax that you got this year is going to give you any cover for next year, so it's something to think about. And if you've got a pre-existing health condition like asthma, you probably want to get a flu vax, if you're heading into winter. Oh, yeah, okay. Again, I didn't prepare the slides, but it is a really good one. Probably refers more to people that will be doing some travel outside of their university. So, again, if you've got holidays and you plan to go to somewhere a little bit exotic, just be really careful. Okay. Any of those trips to a developing country, please, before you leave, go and see your GP, because there's vaccinations that you will need. And the most important ones will be hepatitis A and typhoid. They are not included in your childhood vaccinations, okay? We have students that come back from their trips to Bali and to Thailand, Vietnam over the breaks and come back home, and we'll get the occasional Hep A and typhoid, and you'll be sick for a long period of time with a lot of testing. And it is very easily avoided if you get your vaccines done before you go. If you plan to do it whilst you're there, it's going to take up time, and vaccinations do take time to complete, so you're better off doing them here, and they'll probably be cheaper to get them done here than doing them overseas. And most of the things that we worry about are food and water transmitted. So it is dirty water, dirty food. Okay. And back to risks, okay? There's certain things that you can avoid, like not getting on a scooter without a helmet, being careful when you cross the roads, just standard things, okay? Oh, well, this one you should know about anyway. It doesn't matter where you are. You can avoid some very important sexually transmitted infections by using condoms. Mosquito-borne infections, again, that's something you need to talk to your GP about. It's mainly if you're travelling to developing countries and you need to talk to them about getting some antibiotics to cover you for malaria before you plan to travel. And really, travel consults do take time, and you really want to get them done before you go. Yeah, and so, yeah, just essentially just taking your time to get that organised. Vaccinations are just really important generally. If anyone here is 19 years of age, if you haven't turned 20 yet, our lovely government, Queensland government's actually doing free catch-ups on all the childhood vaccinations. So if you know that you've missed out on your measles, mumps, rubella, your chickenpox, your tetanus, whooping cough, go and see your GP, okay? If you know that you're probably behind in some of them, you already turned 20 but you know you're behind, go and see your GP and get the catch-ups done, because the last thing you want to do is get an illness that's going to make you very sick, have you quarantined at home, you're missing lectures, and you're going to, you know, it's not going to be a good experience. And these are simple things that you can prevent. Yep, same thing. Do your travel. Yeah, and I think we've already spoken to, yeah, we've spoken about that. Just make sure if you have any pre-existing conditions, go and see your GP, get a travel letter, get your medications sorted, and really look closely at your insurance and see what you're covered for in terms of pre-existing conditions. Yeah, and they're just simple things that you need to know just about, and they're the standard things when you're travelling, and for those of you who have travelled, you probably already have done this. But it's just really common sense. If you're doing travel to developing countries, so it's a little bit more complicated again, you need to see your GP and they'll give you information and they'll give you a travel letter and just set you up with other things that you need to take. Yep. Okay. So it all comes down to just preparation and just looking after yourself. And the other thing is also remember that whilst you're there, just your standard, look after your sleep, look after your diet, keep up your exercise. All those things are really important for your general health. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, just before another round of chocolate frogs, I did want to just speak to this slide because it is very, very important. This year, unfortunately, we have had a number of terrorist attacks. Manchester, Barcelona, Las Vegas, France, all over the place. And also there are natural disasters occurring on a regular basis. Every time something happens in your city or even in your region, UQ Abroad will contact you. So if we hear, for example, there has been a shooting at the university that you're going to, if we hear that there has been bad flooding in the city that you're living in, we will send you an email. So please, please send us an email back and let us know that you're okay. If we haven't heard from you within about 24 hours, we generally try to contact your emergency contact just to make sure that you are okay. Fortunately, everyone I've contacted with any of the things that have happened to date, everyone has been okay, but every now and again when I contact a parent, they'll say, oh, hasn't he contacted you? I'm going to get on to him. And so, yeah, just please read your UQ email. That is our primary way of contacting you. And please respond to these to the emails that we send you. And also, please let your friends and family know that you're okay as well. You may think that, oh, yeah, actually, that was pretty minor and it didn't really affect me. But when you're back here in Australia, something like a typhoon or an earthquake, of course we've just had the earthquakes in Mexico, it might seem a lot bigger than it does when you're there. So it is really important to contact your friends and family and let them know that you're okay. Okay, so one piece of advice that Rosie has given with regard to risk minimisation and staying healthy.
Get vaccines done before you go, especially if you're going to the US. Really, really important for the US.
Another piece of advice. Another piece of advice for a chocolate frog. Use condoms, yay. One more piece of advice. Stay off. Stay off motorbikes. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to hear from a couple of students who have been there and done that. So, Lewis and Elizabeth. So, Lewis and Elizabeth have been on exchange, done it all, come back, returned, successfully completing their semester overseas. So they're going to give you some top tips.
All right, guys. My name's Liz. I went to Copenhagen in semester 2, 2015.
And I'm Lewis, and I went to the University of Manchester in semester 1, 2016.
Perfect. And we'll run through some stuff that we think you guys probably need to know that maybe would have been good if we'd known before we left, or that we lucked out and we did know, and that was good, but maybe some of our friends didn't. So, first of all, packing. Everyone's going to say to you, pack light. Pack light. 6 months is a long time to be anywhere, and trying to pack yourself up to be there for that long and plan ahead and whatever is really difficult, and I know that, but honestly, you don't need 6 pairs of jeans, you don't need 25 jumpers, you don't need all that stuff. What you do need is to be able to carry your bag and to not have to, I don't know, in a panic, pull out things at the airport and throw them in the bin because you can't actually take that on your flight because you just run out of room. You also want to be able to buy stuff when you're there. Like, if you're going to Europe or America or, I mean, wherever you go, you're going to find stuff that you want to buy and take home with you. And if you've got 30 kilos full on the way there, you're going to have to lose some of that on the way back. So just make sure you really think about what you're taking and, yes, pack light. Also, make sure, obviously, you've got copies of all of these documents with you. You don't want to rush, run into any issues when you're over there, but also make sure that you've got electronic copies of everything. I know people are going to say that to you and hammer it into you constantly. Make sure your family members have electronic copies as well. Put them in your email or OneDrive or whatever so that if you're in a random rural airport in the middle of Spain, you can get onto a computer and show people that, yes, you do in fact have a letter of acceptance to your university or whatever it is you need. If you lose your passport or whatever, as I said before, it's so much easier if you have an electronic copy. Honestly, it feels like a pain to go through all this now, but it will save you a lot of drama down the road.
Yeah, a few more points on that. Yeah. One thing I like to say is before you go, make sure people know your travel itinerary. Yeah. So people know that there might be a terrorist attack in Barcelona, for example, but if you're in Nice and we're in Barcelona a week ago, you don't want your family and friends saying, oh my goodness, are you all right? Yes, I'm fine, I'm in a different country. Secondly, with an adapter and power board, keep in mind, obviously, unless you go to New Zealand, you're going to have a different plug. You need to take into account how many electronic devices do I need to charge and how many plugs do I need. I survived with one adapter for six and a half months. That was enough. I just charged my phone through my laptop if I really needed 2 things charging. But if you've got things like hair straighteners, hair dryers, maybe other appliances that you want to buy over there, you'll need to have more than one adapter. As well as that, I'd just like to point out that if you are travelling beyond the basic exchange, like before or after your exchange, I recommend buying an additional travel insurance policy that lasts for the duration of your travel, rather than buying little chunks, because you actually find you'll save money by buying insurance for one really long period. And finally, lock your bag.
Yes. Don't need another Chappelle Corby incident out of this room. Just make sure with that as well, with the travel itinerary, that especially if you're going somewhere on your own or with people that you don't normally spend time with or whatever, that you've got like a check-in time with a family member or a person that will actually follow up if you don't check in with them. Like if you're supposed to get home at 5 o'clock on a Friday and you're meant to talk to a person by 7 and you haven't contacted by Monday, that they're actually going to call the university or call, the consulate or whatever it is, but you just don't want to end up in a position where no one's looking for you, basically. Even if you're going to the safest place, these sorts of things just protect you and make sure that, it stays fun.
And one last thing, with your important documents, something that I had a blue folder, and everything important was in there, and it's very helpful. I know this isn't totally relevant, but when I was skiing, nothing to do with UQ, my dad had a ski accident. He said, get out the blue folder, and that's where we had all the insurance papers and all that stuff. And if you're incapacitated, having something like that can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. Cool.
Next slide, travel and money. So first of all, make sure you get your Centrelink set up. I'm not sure about specifics. I know that will be gone through later, but the last thing you want to have to do is be chasing anything up with Australia from the other side of the world. Also, make sure if you haven't done so already, make a budget with expected weekly expenses. Like go online, look at shopping online in whatever country you're going to, if that's possible, and see how much you're going to be spending every week. Because the last thing you want to happen is you're spending 70 Australian dollars in groceries when you expect to spend 40, and then running out of money towards the end of having to live on 2-minute noodles throughout exam block. Another thing is, when you're booking flights, always look at booking a return ticket. It's a lot cheaper to book a return ticket, and you'll get a lot less questions from all the border officials when you enter your host country or another country. As well as that, when you're preparing for arrival, make sure you've got accommodation and how you're going to get from the airport to where you're staying sorted for the first night. It's really annoying when you get to a country that you don't know, a city that you've never been in before, and you just have to. You get into a taxi and say go there, and then if they send you to the wrong place, you don't know what's going on. It's a lot easier to know what you're doing, have everything set out, so if something does go wrong, you can react to that. And as well as that, if you're arriving in accommodation, I would recommend you try and arrive either in the morning or in the middle of the day. I know I arrived at my accommodation at 8 o'clock at night, and all the shops were closed, so I went without dinner and didn't have anything to eat till about 10 o'clock the following morning, which was not fun. So make sure to arrive in at a reasonable hour so you can get things set up, buy cutlery, buy food, and just not go starving.
With that as well, I mean, a lot of you will have travelled before, but a lot of you are also planning to go to places that are going to be 20 to 27-hour flights away. I would advise, my luggage got lost in one of my legs of my journey, that you take a change of clothes and some basic toiletries with you, and any prescription medication that you definitely need, at least month's supply of it or something, so that you don't end up in a situation where you panic because you don't have a change of clothes, or you don't have the pill that you need, or whatever it is. Just make sure you have that sort of stuff on you. Prepare for things to go wrong and then be pleasantly surprised when they don't. And try and make sure that you know what your accommodation's going to have and what it won't, and prepare for that.
One last thing on money. Make sure you know how you're going to carry across your money and what sort of travel cards you're going to use. Be aware that some European countries are quite cash heavy, but these days the international travel cards you have, the ATM fees aren't that bad, but at the same time, make sure that when you do have to withdraw cash from the ATM, you withdraw it strategically, so don't take out 20 euros every day. You might take out 100 euros every couple of weeks, and that's a better way to do things while avoiding getting stung hundreds of dollars in ATM fees.
Keep in mind as well that depending on the quality of the country that you're in and the crime rate, you might not want to carry a big wad of cash on you, because obviously once cash is stolen, that's it. If you do have travel money cards, normally they'll give you two, where you can keep one on you and keep one in your hotel room or in your accommodation or whatever. That's what I did when I was on exchange. I mean, no one ever robbed me, but I also knew that if I did lose my wallet or whatever, I wasn't without money. And just notify your bank as well that you're going overseas. If you plan on using your card over there, you might find, it did happen to a friend of mine, they forgot to tell NAB that they were going to Scotland, and all of their money was frozen because the bank thought that someone had stolen their card and was committing fraud under their name, when in fact they were just silly and they didn't have any money for a couple of days. So you don't want that sort of stuff to happen to you. It really sort of throws a spanner in the works, so just keep that in mind. All right. So on arrival, it seems obvious, attend orientation. I know a lot of us have gotten far into our degrees and we're probably lazy with O Week here. Go to your orientation. Go to every class you can, obviously, but at the start of semester, this is doubly important. Not every university puts important information on anything. They'll just expect that you'll have been here. We didn't know a couple of things. Well, the people at my university didn't know some stuff that was really specifically important and admin related, and that was only told at our orientation sessions. they don't communicate that in any other way at any other time, and you really don't want to end up in a position where you're missing stuff just because you didn't go. It's also a good opportunity to meet people and make friends. Obviously, as you've had hammered into you a few times, you don't have your support network while you're there. This is your opportunity to meet a bunch of other people who also don't have their support network and become each other's support network. So I would suggest that you go to everything, obviously, but orientation is really important. In terms of your accommodation as well, obviously, try and get that organised as soon as possible, but that can also be quite difficult. I completely acknowledge that. So with planning your accommodation, look at different costings and stuff, but also look at what your accommodation's offering you. Some of them have meal plans, or some of them don't have kitchens, so you might have to eat out a lot or whatever. You might not be able to have your own bathroom, you might be sharing, which you can cope. From me, you can cope. But just keep all of that stuff in mind when you're looking at it, and look at the reality of, you know, your accommodation situation. It might seem ideal to be 2 minutes away from the city centre, but the reality is it might cost you thousands of dollars less to be 10 minutes away, and you might get to have your own kitchen and whatever. And in terms of budgeting, it might be worth spending an extra $2,000 to have your own kitchen space, because you know that you're going to then spend way less money on food when you're over there, because you're able to prepare your own food. So just keep that sort of stuff in mind when you're looking at places. And watch out for scams. Reverse image search every photo of accommodation as you're looking. If it comes up as a reverse image search and it's like, wow, say you're looking for places in Prague and it's like, this is also a hotel room in Budapest and in Moscow and in wherever else, then it's a scam. And there are heaps of those. So just reverse image search everything before you book anything. This
is why it's a good idea to go through the official university channels when you're booking accommodation. I know you might want to be adventurous. There are sometimes be not adventurous. This might very well be one of them.
Also, update your address on SIGNET, just your semester address, so that the university knows where you're staying. And also, depending on the country that you're going to, you probably will need a permanent address for visa purposes and stuff, so make sure you try and get on that as soon as possible, and keep everyone in the loop as much as possible as to where you're living and any changes.
Yeah, to that end, it's really important to check your UQ email, and if you don't regularly check your UQ email, redirect that to an email that you do regularly check, so you don't miss things. As well as that, while you're at university, consider that there are some positives to being at the university, such as you will have Eduroam, so you don't need to worry about necessarily having you'll know you'll have internet on the first night if you're at university accommodation. As well as that, it would be a good idea to consider getting a local SIM, because you will want to talk with the locals, you will want to keep in touch with people, and it's also a lot easier having a permanent phone number and being able to use, let's say Apple Maps while you're moving around Europe. As well as that, I'd really encourage everybody to make the most of your exchange. You'll find that when you go over there, you meet heaps of people who are also studying abroad, and you inevitably start to hang out in the same circles. I'd encourage everybody to really diversify into clubs and societies at the host university with your flatmates, particularly if you're living with other locals, because you can really see what's it like living everyday life in the host country. When you hang out with exchange people, essentially, oh look, we're going to go travel every weekend, we're going to go do this, we're going to do that, we won't attend any classes, and before you know it, exchange is over and you've gone home and all you've had is like an overblown Kentucky trip. What you should try and do is get involved with stuff on campus. You want to, if there's volunteering opportunities available, as long as your visa allows you to, get involved. If there's research or internships, again, if your visa allows for it, go for it. If there's clubs and societies, visas will definitely allow that. Go for that. Try and get involved. Go along to pub crawl. Talk to people in lectures. Trust me, they won't bite. It's a really great opportunity. Check things that are going on in the cities. You might just do a Google search of the city you're staying in and you'll find, oh, there's a festival on. I know you have a good experience from your host.
Yeah, I mean, lots of stuff happened when we were on exchange, and I went with my partner, so we were a little bit more insular than I'm sure a lot of people would be, because it's very comfortable when you're basically in the same situation but just in a different country. I would definitely suggest, though, you open yourself to these sorts of opportunities as they drop in, obviously keeping yourself safe, but An example is I randomly got an email to my university email in Copenhagen that was like, hey, do you want to come and eat some Danish food? And I was like, this is suspicious, but I'm going to say yes. And it turned out to be, well, my partner and I were then in a 3-part ad series for Copenhagen's version of like Channel 10. And it was just, I know, you're like, how did this even happen? I'm not really even sure. But that sort of stuff doesn't happen unless you say yes to stuff. I mean, I could have easily just said, no, strange man who's emailing me in a very suspicious way. But, you know, obviously I kept myself safe and knew where I was going. But it's that sort of stuff that just will randomly happen, and you've just got to be prepared to jump all in on. Otherwise, you're basically just traveling. That's the stuff that sets this apart from you just going to Europe or America or whatever for 6 months. Like, also go to your classes and sign up for these classes that you find interesting. That's a really enriching part of this exchange. For me, I picked courses that were relevant to Danish culture, and I got a lot out of that. We went on field trips and random stuff that just wouldn't have happened if I was just traveling. And it's really cool because basically you've just got these crazy good guides showing you around. I mean, you can't ask for more than that. But I guess if I didn't go to my classes and I just did the stuff that I would normally do here, then I would have just basically been living a very expensive 6 months overseas. So just try and incorporate as much stuff in as you can, because random stuff will happen.
Yeah, definitely. Don't be afraid of doing things on your own. If there's an opportunity and you don't think all of your friends are necessarily on board, just go ahead and do it. You only have the opportunity once, unless you plan on going to exchange a second time, which is great. You can do that as well. I'd have to say, sitting at home, watching Netflix, or just talking to people at home, and it's nice to talk to people at home, but just sitting in your room the whole time is probably the worst thing you can do with your exchange. It's about getting out there, meeting new people, having a good time, having great experiences, and just really make the most of what you've got. The time will fly by. I was in Manchester for 4.5 months, and honestly, I don't know what happened to it. It's like, where did all this time go? I know I had flatmates. I'd go out, I'd do stuff with them. Sometimes I'd get a knock on the door about an hour before they went out and say, hey, Lewis, do you want to get out? And it's like, oh, sure, this sounds fine. And finally, remember to study. Study is the reason you're going. I know it's surprising. I didn't think I was going to study either, but study is really good. You can get really valuable experiences. As part of one of my subjects, I actually got to visit a nuclear power plant, which was really cool. And you get to also make friends with people in your cohort. And so you help develop a global network, and you don't know where you run into these people next. And I know next year I'm actually going back to Manchester to visit my friends there and stay with them. So you make lifelong connections if you really put yourself out there.
Yeah, definitely. I would say for sure, make sure you engage as much as possible. I mean, I look at all of you guys and I'm like, bad stuff happened on my exchange for sure. As I said before, my luggage got lost. I got really badly injured at one point, but I'm so envious of you all right now because you're about to go and do something that will be amazing. And I mean, no matter what happens, even if the bad stuff happens, you're still going to have an amazing time. And this is the sort of thing that you only get to do once. So just absolutely...
just say yes.
Say
That's
yes.
what you need to do.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, so you've heard it from Elizabeth and Lewis. Just say yes, get out there. Let's have some more chocolate frogs to keep the energy going. We are halfway through, or over halfway, so we've just got a few more presentations. Give us one tip from Lewis and Elizabeth. Yep. Okay, yep, copies of your relevant documentation. One over by Melinda. Another tip. Alert your bank. Excellent. Another one. Another tip. Yes? Get a local SIM. Great. Another one over by Melinda. Yes? Oh. Attend all the orientation sessions. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. We now have Trish from Student Support Services, who is going to talk to us about culture shock. But just before Trish gives her presentation, Lewis and Elizabeth mentioned the fact that you have to change your address on MySINET. This is a requirement. It's not just to let us know where you are, because but it is a requirement that you keep your SINET information updated. But for those of you who are not leaving Brisbane until perhaps around late February or even early March next year, I would advise you not to change your SINET address until you are ready to go, because if you're still living in Brisbane, you are not living overseas. So change your SINET address at the time that you're about to leave. But it does have to be changed by census date, which is the end of March 2018. But there's no need to rush out and change it tomorrow if you already have accommodation overseas, but just make sure that you change it as you're about to leave or once you're overseas and you have your permanent accommodation. Okay, over to Trish and culture shock. Thanks, Trish.
This sounds like a sad sort of topic to bring the mood down, but it's not actually. It's just to make sure everyone's prepared to make sure the experience is going to be as good as it can be. So, this little diagram here shows that when you actually go overseas, it's all very exciting and you start off at the very, very top. It doesn't matter if you can't read the words, it's the shape that's important. You start off at the top because you're excited, you're going somewhere new, yay. You may experience a little bit of a downward fall as you go, well, I don't know where everything is, it's not how I thought it was going to be, I miss my mother's cooking, whatever it is. You might get down to that bottom and then suddenly everything is starting to feel better again. You get used to everything, starting to feel better about the place, and then it's time to come home. And if you have a look on the other side of the diagram, you'll be hearing from someone in my position too when you come back, because it's sad when you come back as well. So things to look forward to. So culture shock is the inevitable process of your mind and body adjusting to a new place. It's a highly individual experience and it may last weeks, months, hours, days. It depends on you, where you're going and what happens when you get there. For some people, you arrive in a new culture and it's fabulous, you throw yourself into and you find it fantastic. For others, and you may not think you're going to experience this, it may result in discomfort and confusion. You might start judging or evaluating other people and places and reach negative conclusions. So you've gone there with a particular picture in mind, and if it doesn't meet your expectations, it can be a little bit of a shock. So there's differences in lots of things when you go overseas. So even if you are going somewhere that speaks English, there are differences in culture, in the education system, all of those things that you can see in that list. So even if you are going to the States, Australian English is different to American English. And there will be people there who don't understand what you are saying. You have to speak very slowly sometimes, okay? So it doesn't mean that only culture shock will be experienced by those people who are going to a completely different culture, but even things that are slightly similar, there will be places of difference. So, if you experience sleep problems, sometimes it's not just excitement. You may not feel your usual confidence because you don't exactly know where everything is yet. And you may experience feeling lost, helpless, bored, nervous, stressed. You may become withdrawn. You may be overwhelmed. You may be confused by the whole thing, especially if you feel now that it's cool. I don't know what she's going on about. I'm going to be perfectly fine. And you arrive there and you start feeling a little bit wobbly. When you're homesick, it's because you have difficulty in adjusting to your new environment. It doesn't have to be this intense, overwhelming feeling. It's just you're not home anymore. So like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. This is not Kansas. You're feeling removed from your regular support system. There's a lack of control about what's happening around you. Sometimes this ends up with you feeling anxious or depressed and you want to call home. You know, you're trying to get away from your mother as much as possible and suddenly you're just missing her so much. Withdrawing from or rejecting the social life around you and critically comparing everything in your new environment to what's normal for you. So, for example, in the States, somewhere similar, their bread tastes different to ours. It's really sweet and just wrong. I couldn't wait to get back here so I could have some real bread. It's the little things that are going to make things not so interesting for you. That 18 Australia line, it's not just a picture. If you actually call that line, they have kookaburra sounds. They have the sounds of cans being put into a wheelie bin. They have some Australian music. I come from land down under, that sort of thing. But they have some particularly Australian noises and things, cicadas, that if you are feeling sad, even before you go, you can have a listen. You go, oh, is that what Australia is? I never knew. Okay, so that hotline, 18 Australia, is something that you can listen to if you're missing the kookaburras. So how you are going to be affected depends a little bit on your age, and that can go both ways. If you're too young or if you've been very sheltered, it can be like a experience. If you're a little bit older and set in your ways, it can be a bad experience. So it just depends. And how much travelling you've done overseas, so how much you know what you feel like when you go overseas. If you already think, oh, I'm so brave that I'm going overseas, but I'm going to miss my family, I'm going to miss everything, I'm going to be so sad, you're setting yourself up to feel sad. So try and think of this as an absolutely positive adventure. You're allowed to have a little wobble, but try not to make it a big one. The influence of first impressions. So if you go there and everything goes really wrong, you lose your luggage, you can't find your accommodation, the taxi driver sent you to a different place in the city, all of this is going to start your experience in a very negative way, and that can colour your experience. Nothing's going to go right after that. So be very, very careful. If things do go wrong, just treat them as things in isolations. In my family, we call those sort of things adventures. So if your luggage gets lost, that's okay. You're just going to have a different adventure than what you thought. So it's how you put a spin on everything. And beliefs about the support levels available here. So here in the country that you are going to. So really it should be there, but we will support you back here, but you can also get support from overseas. Your personality type will also influence too. Your ability to connect to new people. So if you are super, super shy and you're doing this because your counsellor said this is a great idea for you to do, be prepared to go outside your comfort zone. And your coping style. If, like me, you can say, well, we're just having a different adventure to what we thought, we can sort of get past it. If your coping style is to fall apart, break down, cry, and wait for other people to help you pick yourself up again, then that's going to make it a little bit tricky if things go wrong. Also, there are things that you can't control. How your people here cope with you being away. Is someone going to be phoning you every 5 minutes? I'll go back to the mum thing. Hello, are you eating? Have you washed your clothes? You haven't called me, it's been 3 hours. Okay, so if you have people at home who are trying to pull you back all the time and stopping you, that can be a little bit awkward too, and how much control you have on whatever external factors there are. So you need to be very self-aware. Think positively, be willing to learn and be open-minded. Just because you have Vegemite on your toast every day doesn't mean that you can't suddenly have rice porridge. Listen, watch, observe and reflect. Examine your expectations and your preconceived stereotypes. So that's when you've gone with the expectation that everyone in Denmark are going to be happy and European and love you and they don't. It can be a bit of a shock. Give it time, because the longer that you're in your new culture, the more you can make sense of what you are seeing. So keep your sense of humour and believe in yourself. You all signed up for this. You want to go. Yes? This is so exciting. I know I'm bringing you down here, but this is so exciting. So if you do get a bit wobbly, try to remember back to here and how you were feeling about, gee, I'm about to go. Stay connected with people at home. You've got Facebook, Twitter, all of those things. But remember, if you are in your room all the time or on your phone, you're next to the Eiffel Tower, but you're on your phone to people, you're not seeing and you're not experiencing everything that you need to. So it's fine to stay connected. Skype is wonderful, but don't be connecting with people all the time at home so that you miss out on everything that you should be experiencing overseas. There's a nice balance. So how do you settle in? Make your study space and your new home into your home. Put pictures of the people that you care about on the wall. Your dog, your cat, whatever. Improve your feeling of control over your new environment so that when you come home to your study space or your room, that's your little island of home. One reason that you could start feeling homesick is because you don't have that home place. So make yourself a safe space. So if you do have a bad day, you've got somewhere safe to go back to. Okay? If you are starting not to feel great, be active and fill your day. But make sure that you leave time to relax and self-care. You'll want to do lots and lots of sightseeing when you're there. Don't burn yourself out in the first week. Keep up activities that are important to you from home and keep some familiar aspects of your schedule. So I know you're going somewhere to a new place. They do things differently, but try and do some things that are familiar to you so you don't disconnect completely. But also you need to create new routines. So if people there don't get up till 10 o'clock in the morning and they go to bed at midnight and you're used to getting up at 6, you may have some readjusting to do. But it's all very possible. Stay healthy, exercise regularly, walk to explore your city. I never walk when I'm here, but take me to Europe, I will walk all day. I can do 20 kilometres in a day and it doesn't hurt. I have to walk from here back to student services and it's a big journey. So if you're not an exerciser like me, exploring a new city and a new country is quite invigorating. Make sure you eat well. The students told you not to survive on 2-minute noodles, you'll get sick. Make sure you get enough sleep, healthy body, healthy mind, all of that sort of things. You need to keep healthy. If you feel shy and awkward and vulnerable, that can increase your homesickness feeling. If you're shy, give yourself one manageable goal a day. I'm going to speak to one person that I haven't spoken to today. Shape your own experience, make a bucket list for your new surrounds so you know which country that you're going to. Make a list of everything that you want to do and see. If you're not sure, everything is a little bit overwhelming, look up 20 things to do in Brisbane and have a look at those things and say think about which ones you would actually like to do if you were here, and then see if you can find something like that overseas. Okay, so if it's overwhelming, bring it back to something familiar and then compare it to something over there. Ask the locals about what you should be doing. They will tell you things. Remember, it's part of the natural cycle for you to feel a little bit sad. So you'll go from being excited to being, oh, is this what I signed up for? Give yourself time to feel better. It will all be new and it'll still be exciting in a little while. If you find that you are not coping, you can contact student services at your university if they have it, or you can contact us here. You can talk to the counsellors here by Skype. You can email them. There will be support people to make sure that your experience is okay. So if it starts getting a little bit serious and you don't start feeling better, make sure that you reach out and tell someone. We tell students all the time, we can help you, but we don't know that you're in trouble unless you tell us. We don't have that little thing to pick out the students in the great court that are not coping and take them back to student services. Okay, you have to tell us that things are not going okay. If you do suffer from a psychosis, a psychotic illness, if you have had depression in the past, if you suffer from anxiety, now these are conditions that are like any illnesses. Sometimes you're in remission and sometimes they come back. So even if you are well now, but have had incidents of those things in the past, it's a really really, really good idea to let study abroad know that potentially there may be issues. They're not going to stop you going. If you're scared that people won't let you go because you've suffered from depression or some sort of mental health thing, then wait till you're accepted for sure and then let them know. Okay? So if you let study abroad here know, though, they will keep your information confidential, but they also then will have a plan in place so if it goes wrong for you overseas, that they know what to do. You need to plan your support and response before you travel. Make sure your medication is allowed into the country that you're going to, or if you have to refill that medication, it may have a different name. So make sure all about your medication before you go is absolutely fine. If you have academic adjustments here, you may need academic adjustments over there. Some students we've had in the past have gone, yep, I get adjustments here, but you know what? I'm feeling great. I'm going to go over there and wing it. I'm going to be fine and fabulous and everything will be going great. And then something goes a little bit wrong, anxiety kicks in, and they fail exams or tests or things because exam adjustments weren't put in place at the right time. We can make sure all of that goes well for you if we know in advance. So if you need things to happen here, don't think that it's going to go away just because you're in a different country having an adventure. Sometimes that new excitement, that adrenaline, can make it a little bit worse for a little while. Let your mental health professionals know about and assist you in planning your travel. So if you see a counsellor here or externally or your GP for any sort of illness that you have, make sure you discuss with them before you go what you're going to do to make sure that you're okay. So travelling abroad will add an additional stress. This is perfectly normal. Stress can look like and occasionally is mental illness. So you may be homesick. It doesn't mean that you've already got depression, that's it. Okay? If you are feeling homesick and then you cannot function, you don't want to get out of bed, you're not talking to people, you're not eating, that means it's tipped over into a more scary field. Make sure you contact somebody for assistance. If you're unsure, having difficulty, contact UQ. We'd rather you contact us and it turn out to be a simple thing than you worry about a serious concern is too little to worry anyone with. Okay? So as long as you tell someone, I'm not okay, we can help you. So please don't suffer in silence and think, oh, I'm just not being brave. If you need help, please, please ask for it. Enjoy your journey. It is so exciting. Experience the culture while you have the chance. Laugh at your mistakes. Me speaking German is so funny. They usually end up talking back to me in English and I want to practice my German. I don't get to do that here. Make global friends. Get a new perspective on the world. You're learning new skills for life. Believe in yourself. You wanted to do this. This will be fabulous. Okay? It is so exciting. So just enjoy the experience. If you need help, make sure that you reach out. But apart from that, enjoy the journey.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you very much. Okay, last lot of chocolate frogs. 5 tips for getting over culture shock. Melinda and Claire, go for it. Getting over culture shock. Keep going.
Call 1800 Australia.
Anyone else? Get involved in those activities.
Okay, how are we doing? All right, great. Just got a couple more speakers to go. So it's my turn now, and I'm going to be talking about a number of different things with regard to your academics at the host university and also our expectations of you. So one of the things, as some people have pointed out, you are going overseas to study. And you will find a lot of differences between your studies here at UQ and the environment of UQ and the place where you're going to. One of the things that a lot of students comment on is the class size. So here, many of you are taught in classes of 300-400 students. Overseas, particularly in Europe and the United States, a lot of classes are only 15 to 20, maybe 30 students. Your absence will be noticed. So please, and also you need to be aware that other countries don't record lectures. It's not an option to miss your class and to catch up by listening to a recording. Attendance is often taken at class, and if you do not attend the required number of courses, you will fail the class. So please make sure as part of your orientation that you find out about all of the academic requirements so that you don't get a surprise at the end of semester when you fail a class. Yeah, but I only missed 10 classes, you know. Often also no grading criteria is provided. So here you're given a 5-page electronic course profile. Often at other universities they don't have that kind of depth. With regard to the kind of assessment that you're going to have. It might be something that you find out as you go through the course. So once again, if you have any concerns about the assessment, what is required of you, make sure that you do talk to your lecturer, your professor, to get a clearer idea of that. There will also be a different study load. So I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in the next slide. And different kinds of assessment. So particularly in American universities, they have continuous assessment. A lot of students comment on the fact that, oh, it's like being back in high school. But in fact, you're just given small assignments or small reading, small quizzes every week, rather than 2 or 3 larger assignments. Some places have 100% final exams. Other universities, particularly in Europe, they have an oral exam. So sometimes you might have 1 half-hour oral exam, and that is the assessment for your course. So please make sure that you talk to your professors, your lecturers, your tutors early on if you are struggling, to make sure that you do successfully complete the semester to get out of your studies what you're meant to be going there for. So with regard to the full-time load, you need to be aware that there are different aspects with regard to full-time load. So most of you are going to a country where you will require some kind of study permit or student visa, and most countries have a minimum study requirement for you to meet that student visa. So that minimum requirement may be different from the full-time load that is indicated on the UQ Abroad website as the number of credits or number of ECTS that you need to complete in order to be awarded 8 units of credit at UQ. So you need to be very clear, and this is on our website. It's also in the credit approval letter that you've received from your faculty as to the number of credits or ECTS that you have to complete in order to receive those 8 units of credit. So please make sure that you have a clear understanding of that. So if you can't get into the approved courses at the host, so even though you've been approved by your faculty here for certain courses to take overseas, that does not mean that you're guaranteed entry into those courses. So some of you are in the process of applying to your university. You will be enrolling in courses, or you might not be enrolling or registering for courses until you arrive at your university. In other cases, you have not officially enrolled in a course until you've taken the exam for that course at the end of the semester. So you need to find your way through the new academic system. If you can't get into the courses that you've been approved for, particularly if it's a compulsory course and you really need to get into that course, do what you can to try and get into it. So there are a number of reasons why you might not be able to get in. Perhaps the course is cancelled, okay? You won't have much chance there. But if the lecturer says, oh, the course is full, I can't take any more students, go and talk to them. Say, look, I've come all the way from Brisbane just to be in your class. Do something to get into that class. We had a student a number of years ago who said that crying was actually very effective. So, turn on the waterworks, turn up those acting skills, do something to get into that class. If you can't get into the class, then find another class that you feel will meet the requirements of the course that you need to take for your UQ requirements, and write back to your faculty with whatever kind of course description you can get, so that your faculty back here can approve the course. You will have a little bit of time to sort of add and drop like we do here, but you do need to remember, especially those of you who are going to Canada and the US, you're probably going to be starting at the beginning of January. Guess what? It's still holiday time here, and there won't be too many people at your faculties. So you just need to be a little bit patient with the people in your faculty, because your courses will have to be approved. Okay, so the full-time study load. So at UQ, a standard full-time study load is 8 units or 4 courses. But this differs around the world. So I've given the example of a pizza. So we divide the pizza into 4. In the US or Canada, they might divide the pizza into 5. So 15 credits equals 5 courses. In the UK, 60 credits is a standard full-time load. If you go to the University of Edinburgh, where every course is worth 20 credits, this may only be 3 courses. At other universities, you might have to take 6 courses. It doesn't mean that you're doing 6 UQ courses, but 6 courses is the standard full-time load. Again, Europe varies wildly. Typically, the standard full-time load is 30 ECTS, and Asia, a lot of variation. If, when you get over there, you feel that the full-time load, as indicated on your letter, as indicated on our website, is going to be too much for you, you're in a new environment, you might be studying in a new language, you can write back to UQ Abroad and request a reduced load. That means that you would be taking the equivalent not of 8 units, but the equivalent of 6 units. So, for example, at a European institution, instead of taking 30 ECTS, you would be taking 22.5 ECTS. So if you feel that you just can't cope, you've got all of those other things going on, you're dealing with a new language, you're in a new country, you might be dealing with culture shock, then write back to us and we can approve for you to take a reduced load, which means you can drop one of your exchange courses as long as it's before the end of March, and take the equivalent of 6 units. I've talked about, 6 units in your final semester. If you're you only have 6 units to complete, that is fine. I've talked about the requirement for getting approval from UQ Abroad for that reduced load. But you are still charged 8 units until that permission is granted. And if you ask for this after the 31st of March, which is our census date, then you will also have to go through a process through Central UQ to request removal of academic liability, which is more complicated. So it's really important to make that request before the end of March. Taking more than a full-time load is not possible. So if you get over there and you go, oh wow, this is so much easier than UQ, and I'm going to be taking 20 credits at an American university, and I'm going to be requesting 10 units when I get back to UQ, that is not possible. You will only be able to get a maximum of 8 units. If you are in the Bachelor of International Studies, you will be enrolled in 9 units because you're doing that 1 unit comms course that is a required course while you're overseas. Grades and GPA. Okay, so the grades that you receive on exchange are not transferred to your UQ GPA. However, The transcript that you receive from your exchange is part of your tertiary education. If you fail a course on exchange, it means you will not receive 8 units worth of credit. And that failure on the transcript from your exchange university, like I say, is part of your tertiary transcripts. So when you're applying in the future to go to graduate school, medical school, perhaps if you want to come back here and get into honours, those grades that you have received on your transcript, whether there's a failure or not a failure, you've passed all your courses, but the grades that you have received may be taken into consideration. So just remember that. So it's not a holiday. You are studying. The studies that you're doing do count towards your tertiary degree here at UQ, but the grades themselves do not translate to your UQ GPA. However, they may be taken into consideration for a very wide range of things. If you withdraw from a course at the host university, it's really important to find out how that is going to be reflected on your transcript. At some universities, a withdrawal can mean a fail. So make sure that you sort all of that out right at the very beginning. Altering your time on exchange. You've heard from Trish. Exchange can be challenging for some people. You are away from your support group here in Australia, and if you feel at some point that it's all too much for you, you're missing your home, you really need to come back for your physical or mental well-being, this is not a failure at all, and you are perfectly within your rights to say, okay, I've given it my best shot, but I need to come home now. And that is fine. But you do need to let UQ Abroad know that you're withdrawing. You also need to talk to your host university and let them know that you're withdrawing. Make sure that you get all of the right advice with regard to withdrawing from your accommodation, booking your flights home, and all of that. So do write to UQ Abroad and we can provide you advice if you do need to come home early. Some students want to extend their exchange. Now, you may remember going back to the Next Step session about a semester ago when you applied, it's not possible to extend your exchange overseas. So you were given the opportunity to apply for 2 semesters in many cases. If you did not take that opportunity, if you are not able to stay for 2 semesters, then once you get overseas, or in fact even now, it's too late, but a lot of students will get overseas and go, wow, this is fantastic, I want to stay. I'm sorry, it's too late, we can't extend your exchange. If you do want to stay, you might be able to do it as an independent student and pay the host university, but that's something that we can talk to you about if and when you are interested in doing that. Okay, another very important thing to remember is that exchange is a privilege and not a right. You are representing the University of Queensland, you're representing Brisbane, you're representing Australia, and you must abide by the UQ Student Charter, which means that you need to communicate with us and to the host university and to your fellow students in a respectful manner. It's also important to respect your host university's regulations and policies and your host country's laws and regulations as well. Just remember that your behaviour can affect the exchange, and in fact it has affected our exchange agreements when students have perhaps not abided by either the student charter or the exchange, the host university's student charter. So please remember that, keep that in the back of your mind, and be a good representative. Part of representing UQ is participating in any kind of study abroad or exchange fairs that your university may have on while you're there. We would really appreciate it if you participated in these experiences because it helps build the exchange program. The exchange program is a reciprocal program, which means you can go because we have students coming from your host university to UQ. And if we want to continue that flow of students, we need you to to encourage more students to come here. We also need you, when you come back, to encourage your friends and family, students who are studying at UQ, to go on exchange. But that's for next year. Also raise the profile of UQ and Brisbane. Believe it or not, people have not heard of Brisbane outside of Australia. They've heard of Sydney, they've heard of Melbourne, and now I guess they're going to hear about Canberra, because apparently Canberra is the best city in Australia. We all know that's not true. So go out there and promote Brisbane. Okay, Beck and Ruby are going to talk about staying connected, and then we just have one more speaker for you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ruby and I'm the Comms Officer for Student Services, and this is Beck, Comms Officer for Employability Centre.
I'm also very jealous that you get to go on exchange.
It's
and
very...
I could probably fit in your suitcase, so just put it out there.
Oh, is this...
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Look, technical difficulties,
Okay.
as always.
It's,
Okay, I do have a USB if we need one.
Here.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
So staying connected on Exchange. So yeah, as I said, I am the comms officer, and I've gone through a lot of UQ Abroad images in the past few months, getting our brochure together. And there are a lot of gems. There are a lot of beautiful photos that make me incredibly jealous. But there are a few rocks in there that aren't so shiny. And I'm here to make sure that your photos, for your benefit, but also for my benefit, when I'm putting those brochures together, are beautiful, because pictures are 1,000 words, say 1,000 words, and your experience, I'm sure you would love to remember it in pictures. Yeah, they can really mean a lot, and I'm sure you'll regret it if you don't take photos of your experience. But yeah, please send us your photos during your exchange as well. We've got a Facebook page and Instagram where you can message us or just use our hashtag UQAbroad. Highly recommend that you have a look at the hashtag on Instagram. There are some beautiful photos on there. And yeah, you can just email us as well. Go old school. So take photos of this. This presentation will probably make, there's a lot of common sense in there, but sometimes it's nice to just get remembered of it. So obviously sights and adventures. I mean, is anyone going anywhere where they know something that they want to take a photo of? No? No one? Have you looked at your host country at all? Do you know where you're going?
I guess the landmarks that you
Yeah.
Yeah, well, probably South American prior to Machu Picchu. Stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone else? Is there going to be a lot of photos of food? Yeah. So anyway, so sights and adventures. Please take photos of when you're walking around Europe, going to temples, going to castles. We'd love to see them. Your host university. I mean, here at UQ, what are some images that kind of represent UQ? Anyone? Jacarandas? Ibises? Yeah, for sure. No, seriously. I don't think anyone will be taking photos outside of Hartley Teakle, outside this lecture theatre. I mean, that's not really, doesn't really trigger any memories, and it's not, that photogenic. But yeah, just keep those things in mind. I mean, I really regret when I went to the University of Indonesia not taking enough photos of there, because it was a beautiful campus. I just took a lot of photos of food, which I kind of regret. So make sure that you're in the photos as well. Friends networking. The people that you meet on exchange are probably going to be lifelong friends, and it'd be great to capture those experiences as well. And activities and events. I'm sure there's a lot of different events going on in your host country. It could be religious festivals, it could be St. Paddy's Day, it could be Oktoberfest, which leads into a pretty good point of just consider what you post. So I'm sure you might have some privacy settings, but just be mindful that you show your fun side. I don't want to be the fun police, but think about whether you'd be happy seeing your prospective employer or even your mum to see some of those photos. Try not to be too messy, but also try to have fun. Cool. So this is pretty common sense, but we do receive a lot of photos that are quite blurry. They're black, so I don't know what you're doing. The sky seems to be on a 90-degree angle. I don't know what's going on there. But yeah, just make sure that, making sure that you're in focus, there's good lighting, make sure the sun is not just directly above you and you're just a shadow, and follow the rule of thirds. Oh, also, good reminder, you don't need an expensive camera to take a good photo. Most smartphones are everything in one. If you want to take like a GoPro or a DSLR, that's totally fine if you're a photography nerd, but you realistically, a smartphone can do everything for you.
And it's actually a shame that we can't use your photos to showcase your adventures, so we really encourage you to take really good photos.
Yeah. And look, this is just like a simple photography kind of tip. You don't have to make sure that every time you take a photo, you're like, oh, this is the grid, and I'm here. Just keep it in mind. Rules are meant to be broken as well. But yeah, it's just a good tip to keep in mind. So here's some really great photos of exchange and some things that we'd love to see from you. Does anyone have any ideas about why these are good photos? Anyone? Are they terrible? Pardon? No, they're not bland. You can see them. That's pretty good. And they kind of tell a story. And that's something that you'll really see when you look back on your photos, on your exchange. You'll remember what happened, the story behind that photo and the story behind that day. Here's some more good photos. They're really beautiful. The scenery is gorgeous. And I'm sure there are some great stories behind those. Here are some not so great photos. Does anyone know what that first left-hand photo is? Because I still don't know. These are all photos that were sent in to us. And yes. So that first one, I'm not actually sure what that is. It's a bit blurry. It's a bit dark. I think the cherry blossoms. I could be wrong. The second one, it's perfectly fine, but it's a bit dark. You can even probably, with a good filter, probably fix that. But don't go overboard. I'm sure you have one of those friends who just goes overboard with the filters and they kind of look like a bit of an alien form. But yeah, and the last one, you can't really see who she is or what she's pointing at. That could be Brisbane, for all I know. It's not really, it's a bit nondescript. And here are some more. Look.
The food does look good, though.
I don't think it's Insta-worthy, though, that food. But yeah, so look, when you're sending us photos as well, I'm sure that palmy probably had some great memories attached to it. But we don't really know what's going on there. So just keep that in mind. We do really want to share your photos and share your experience with other students. But yeah, and the last one, it's not a bad photo. It's just it's kind of just hard to distinguish him from the trees. I don't really know where he ends and the tree begins. So just keep those in mind. But yeah, please send us your photos. They really do help other students. I'm sure when you began exchange, you stalked a few students' photos from your host universities, maybe checked out some of those hashtags of the different host unis and hopefully UQ Abroad. Please follow us on Instagram. So that's the UQSec Instagram. But yeah, please send us your photos. It's really great. I'm sure you'll form some really great memories, but remember to capture them. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ruby and Beck. And we are almost finished. So, last but not least, so one of the things that Trish also touched on were the adventures, so the things that perhaps didn't work out quite so well. One of the other, so Trish said, well, that's, you can always look at it as an adventure that didn't quite work out the way that you had planned. In my family, we call those travel stories, but right here, we call that employability. And here's Anna Richards to talk about how you can turn those misadventures into something that will help your employability in the future.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone, for being here, for listening to me in the few final minutes of the session. Today, I just really want to touch on the fact that you're about to embark on a really fabulous adventure. You are going above and beyond what is generally expected of you in your degree course, so you're well on the way to developing a number of skills from that experience. And as Jan said, and Trish mentioned, that there'll be ups and downs along the way, but all of those experiences are something that you can learn from. So what we know about employability development, I'll just tell you really quickly. You'll be hearing about employability a lot at the moment, but basically what we're talking about is the ability to develop skills and attributes that employers think are important for you to do the job that you're likely to be doing when you graduate. Okay? Now, employers aren't convinced that things like intangible skills or soft skills like resilience or initiative or motivation can be developed in a classroom. And I'm sure Jen will agree that we're not convinced either. We think that you develop those skills by having experiences and learning to overcome certain challenges. And while your exchange experience won't be entirely challenging, it'll be fun and exciting, but there might be some little challenges along the way, and that's where you're likely to develop those other skills that you can market to employers. So basically what I'm here to just let you briefly think about before you go away is take note of the things that are going on around you. If you're having a rough day or you have a difficult situation while you're away, just keep a really brief note of it. Perhaps if you're keeping a journal, note it down. If you've got a blog that you're writing, note it down. And then when you come back here after your fabulous time away, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can use those experiences and articulate them to an employer to show that you've developed certain skills and attributes. So that will happen once you get back, whether that's next semester or this semester afterwards. I'll be able to teach you specific skills on how to communicate that development. Okay? So it's really important. All I need to say is have a fabulous, fabulous time. Be open to all possibilities while you're there, but if things get rough, it's definitely not a failure. It's something that you can be learning from and that you can market to an employer once you're starting to look for jobs. Just the last thing before you go, if you are interested in employability development, I would recommend that you go online to the free massive open online course Employ 101X. It's available on the edX platform, and it just tells you a little bit more about how to develop employability, why that's important for you, and how to make the most of the experiences that you're engaging in. That's it for me.
Just going back to the Employ 101X, so Anna was instrumental in developing this MOOC, and one of the examples that's used in the MOOC is in fact one of our exchange students who went to France a couple of years ago, and so there's a great video of her talking about an extremely bad experience she had, and how she overcame that, and how she could then interpret that and articulate what she learned from that experience into the workplace. So it's definitely worth having a look at. So before we say bon voyage, does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask now? So Melinda, Claire and I will be here afterwards to answer any questions you may have, but any general questions that I could answer before we finish? No? Okay. Have a fabulous time. Read your email. Read your email. Thank you.